Week we have an NDE researcher, award-winning educator who studied her postdoctoral at Harvard University, author of God Came to My Garage Sale, and co-author of 4 best-selling anthologies. I'd like to welcome Dr. Marni Hill Foderaro to the show. How you doing?
Hi, Dylan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I hope I got that name pronunciation right.
You did. It's
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I struggle with that kind of thing. Thanks for being on the show today. Thanks for, bringing this kind of information to my listeners. This is important work that I feel that you're doing, and it's stuff that I'm very fascinated in and very interested in, because I think there's a lot of credibility and a lot of evidence that suggests that there is something going on with some of this NDE stuff. And what is your
most definitely, I agree.
Yeah. So what is your background? Can you maybe tell us, the listeners, a little bit about who you are and, like kind of what type of person you are, and, maybe where you came from before you had a spiritual awakening or understanding of how important the kind of work is that you're doing?
Sure. I grew up atheist in Forest, Illinois, so in the Midwest. My parents were educators. They didn't really expose me to religion or spirituality, but a lot of other good things, an appreciation of nature, and definitely a love of humanity, and being a good person and working hard. So I had a lot of good values, but I certainly didn't have a foundation with anything spiritual or religious. I went off to college at an early age. And during that time, I just was drawn to God somehow. Even though I didn't have much exposure, I just knew that there had to be, a higher power of some sort. I was basing it more on just evidential stuff, like, our bodies are pretty amazing. The fact that we can get a cut and then we have a scab, or if we have, just the whole, our anatomy blew me away. That just couldn't be something thrown together by some sand and water.
Yeah,
with an ocean.
I've often thought of like how just the chemistry of our body, right? And how
Yeah.
our hormones and everything adjust in our blood levels to, keep us regulated and right.
Well, just that we can reproduce. Like, I can reproduce. I have 2 children. I reproduced. I made 2 people. That to me just blew me away.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I wouldn't say I was dabbling in it. I actually went so far as to be baptized in the Presbyterian church. And probably the reason for that was my grandmother was Presbyterian. So, there wasn't a lot of thought that went into it. Went on to get married, and I married someone who was Catholic, but we chose not to have a big mass or anything like that, a traditional wedding ceremony mass. But later on, when we were going to start a family, I really wanted to have our family be on the same page, with religion. And so I became Catholic. And what was really exciting about that, even though I really don't consider myself involved with organized religion right now, I'm more of a spiritual person. But what was neat about it was I got a chance to read the Bible a lot, and I got a chance to understand some of the interpretations, and I became a lector where I actually read. And so, I was getting more into that, but still, I wasn't someone who was really into this organized religion thing, especially with, things you hear on the news. And I don't know, just there's some negative things associated with organized religion. And it seemed like that didn't go along with what my view was just all good and all loving. And so, But then, I was married for 27 years, and it came very clear to me that I needed to get out of my marriage. It was, I didn't realize it at the time, but I certainly do now how abusive it was. And so when I got out of that marriage, my world came crashing down. My American dream, just everything kind of fell apart. I was still teaching full time and, raising my family. My two children were adults at the time, which was, much better than leaving the situation when they were younger, because of who I was dealing with my ex-husband. It turns out I lost everything. I lost my home, which I thought was paid off for 10 years. I lost all my money. I lost all my assets. And, that was bad enough. I ended up having a garage sale, which prompted me to write my spiritual fiction. God came to my garage sale, but at this garage sale,
That's
a lot of
interesting.
miracles. Yes. Yeah. Here's my book.
So that's where the title came from. I was going to ask
That's
you.
where the title came from. I don't know if you might not be able to see it with
hold it a little closer to the camera. Can you do that? Yep. There we go.
Okay. With the reflection.
Yeah.
There
you
it
go.
is.
Yep.
But anyway, I did have a lot of miracles that happened during that time. And then it wasn't until several months later when I realized that parental alienation was part of my domestic violence, where I lost an adult child that I was close to for 20 years. I was like the primary caregiver, and I was, just a normal range, loving mom, and just shocked to realize that an adult child could believe lies or kind of align with someone that did a lot of bad things. My ex-husband did a lot of bad, unethical wrongdoings, and it blew me away that I would lose that relationship. So that to me was like death. Losing a child. It's been 6 years, and I still don't have contact with this child, and who's 26 now. And that, I think, was my big turning point, where I just the shock of it all just brought me to a real low level, even though I still held it together, and I still always believed in goodness and in humanity. Even though other people do negative things, I just, I don't, that isn't who I am. And so, but that was like the catalyst. And then the garage sale happened around the same time. And then I realized I have had spiritual experiences throughout my life, and I didn't really realize it or acknowledge it. It's just like being in an abusive relationship. I don't want to compare the two really, but I was married for 27 years, and there were so many red flags even before I got married, but I just brushed it off. I just didn't focus on it. I just kept busy, and then finally, you're forced to look at something. Well, I think the same thing happened with spirituality. Is I had different experiences throughout my life that were like miracles, but I didn't really acknowledge it until like my whole world came crashing down, and I was just forced to reflect and just really spend time, where everything kind of stopped. And so now then with that experience, and I was compelled to write about it, even though it's a spiritual fiction, and it was endorsed by James Redfield, who wrote the Celestine Prophecy, who also was very well known in fiction writing circles, although it was inspired by real experiences. That's what I ended up writing about. So a lot of the experiences, I would say most of them in my book, which has like 13 chapters, vignettes, those those experiences, they were, what I wrote about was inspired by real experiences. So what I prompted, what I'm just someone who wants evidence. I want proof. I don't, I just can't, faith is very hard for me. I didn't grow up as a faithful person, to just believe in something that was not tangible. I just wasn't wired that way. So I wanted proof. So I did a lot of research on my own. And part of that research involved going to the IONS meetings, which are the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and listening to hundreds of different people, credible people, medical doctors, just very believable everyday people that have had near-death experiences, and so many of them have so many common threads. And between that and researching and then having my own experiences, I completely am a believer that there is more to this life on earth. We are actually spiritual beings having a human experience, as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have a certain maybe situation or event that you can pinpoint that after you hit rock bottom that begun this spiritual awakening, or has it just been something that's kind of progressed after over learning, the different listening to the different NDE experiences, and just over time, just all the information you've gathered through your research, has that been kind of what's led you to it, or is there like a particular turning point?
I would say there is a turning point, and the garage sale was a turning point, because here I had lost everything, and then I had to basically, you don't recoup your money or whatever with garage sales. Basically, I had to give away all my belongings just to not only make ends meet, but to transition from, a big suburban beautiful home to a small apartment somewhere. But I would say the turning point, one main thing that happened to me, I guess, was that started me being aware of so many different things happening all together. I was at a nail salon, out of all things, just trying to, I had done this garage sale, and I, wanted to treat myself to get a manicure and pedicure, and, in a local salon where I live. And I actually had an experience where I believed, that I experienced something that was going on for hours and hours and hours, when really it was only minutes. It was very slow motion. But a friend of mine that had recently passed away from cancer, I feel like she came through the television set, not herself, but just in showing me. She was showing me her hometown that I had never seen, and I had never seen it before. Later on, it was actually, I think, months later, I looked up her hometown. I did a search and looked at images, and that was the exact image that I saw on this TV that I had no knowledge of before. There was also an older woman that was part of this TV, paranormal experience, that was all in slow motion, showing me her hometown, showing me this very special friend of hers, this elderly lady. I had heard of this. I had heard of it, that she had a good friend back in Southern Illinois, where she was from. But I remembered this lady's, on this TV when I'm getting my nails done, that really it was only, 15 minutes or so. But to me, it was hours and hours and hours sitting there. That's how it felt. And I remember what this lady looked like. And it wasn't until much later, helping to clean out her, organize her belongings, that I come across this picture of this lady, the same lady. I'm like, who is this? Oh, well, that's, Maida, her really good friend. And so that was just maybe the turning point experience. But then at the same time, before and after, I had numerous experiences with dragonflies surrounding me and people coming to the garage sale that had special messages, and I don't remember them coming or leaving, and just the unique things that happened.
Which
I've had, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, which likely is probably always happened in your life, right? But
Yes, I believe
you
so.
just are now aware of
Right.
consciousness and you're aware of what is taking place. And I think, you had said that you're not necessarily wired that way, but I think it's a culture thing too, right? Because I'm from the Midwest too, and
Okay.
we're kind of like at least the majority of people I feel in the Midwest are like blue collar, hardworking, nuts and bolts kind of people.
Just down to earth,
Yeah, what you
everyday
see is what
people.
you get, and
Yeah.
we don't really have that kind of spiritual upbringing, but I think it's fascinating that you have found it, and yeah, so that's
Yeah, it's a
interesting.
it's a game changer for me. I mean, it's been unbelievable because, like, for example, I remember an experience when my kids were little and my son, well, younger, and my son had his driving permit, and so I was letting him drive. We're in the middle of basically nowhere, and he's driving, and out of the blue just comes an 18 wheeler, which is not even common for where this road is, came barreling down and missed our car by inches. But what I remember, and I didn't remember this until after my awakening for the most part, I remember that I thought we were goners, that we were going to be hit by this car, or by this truck, and we were in our car. But I remember physically feeling the car jump forward, and I blocked that out. But I remember it vividly, now that it jumped out and we missed the truck, that big 18 wheeler. And I just have had other experiences that are very similar, where I feel like there was a guardian angel, or I mean, I don't know exactly what it is. It's hard to put a name
Yeah.
to it, but definitely it was a divine intervention, that we were supposed to continue living our life, and not to die at that time. And there were a few other experiences where I really should have died and didn't.
I can
So
kind of relate to that,
yeah,
especially
have you had that?
with a few. I've been in a few pretty bad car wrecks. I mean, pretty brutal. And
Okay.
there's been a couple experiences where, like, in that moment, you almost feel like you're you're safe or you're being protected. I don't know. It's a strange feeling. Now, do you
Right.
think that moment when you were in the car with your son
Yeah.
and that tractor trailer was riding down the road, do
Right.
you
Or
think that
18 wheeler. It was an
it,
18 wheeler
yeah,
going fast.
do
Yeah.
you think that was a potential maybe getting off point that your soul said, no, we're not doing this right now, and that we're going to, yeah,
Most definitely, because there's no way we could have survived that. And the fact that we were just, he was driving, and not an experienced driver, and just was kind of slowly crossing the road. We're in the middle of nowhere, and this truck comes out of almost nowhere. I mean, just the whole experience was unbelievable. And we were amazed when it happened, but I basically just brushed it off as, oh, nothing, no big deal. But then I remember the jolting feeling that something moved my car forward a lot to avoid the collision. So yeah, maybe it was an angel, or maybe it was, we have exit points in our life, and maybe that could have been one, but that, for whatever reason, it was not one. um I
well, I think
I
you probably can come up with a bunch of reasons why it
oh
wasn't
yeah,
one. I mean, look at
sure,
what you're
sure.
doing right now is probably, you know, a big reason why, you know, you didn't, you know,
Right.
you've got things to do. You've got,
Right. I mean, really, if I was not in the world, at that time, I wouldn't have experienced what I did, even as horrific as my divorce was, and the legal nonsense still continues, just because, people that are abusers, they don't want to let you go easily. They, you know, they have a hard time moving on in their own life or whatever. And, but I just believe that I had to experience that. It was almost a blessing that if I didn't experience that, I might have just been going along, you know, accepting the treatment that I was given, and just, but going on in life, because I did have, in my heart of hearts, I believe in goodness and honesty and love and that kind of thing. I was kind of blinded by all of that. But, in some ways, some of the negative things that have happened were really like blessings. It was almost like a gift that I could actually feel these feelings. Or maybe I was meant, maybe I was meant to experience what it felt to lose a child, which is just, I know there's probably some of your listeners have lost a child. And when you lose someone, or you even possibly are close to losing your life and you have a near-death experience, you really come back to life looking at it very differently. And so maybe I was meant to experience all these things, because I'm living a beautiful life now. I'm very happy. I'm writing a lot. I'm working on other books, and I'm able to talk with you and other people about these experiences, which, is very, very validating for me. But at the same time, I think it really helps others that don't have the voice or the opportunity, or, they've experienced some of these things, but they can't put it into words, or they're too afraid to talk about it. A lot of people that have had major experiences like you and I have had, sometimes it takes years and years, sometimes even decades, before people can come forward and talk about it.
Yeah, and that brings me to the point of near-death experiences, and there's doing a lot of great work at the University of Virginia on these kind of things, like the near-death experience type things. And it tends to be when these people have these experiences, correct me if I'm wrong, or help me, maybe you can add to this with the research that you've done. These people come back different, right?
Oh,
And,
yeah,
and
definitely.
oftentimes they even come back more even sensitive to different things that they weren't able to experience prior to the near-death experience.
Right. Everyone that I've talked to, and everyone I've listened to, and every book that I have read, and every researcher that has written on this, they all have the common thread of love. Love is the answer. So we need to love one another. And that's what we're here for. So all of them have that common thread. But definitely, I would say a number of these people, not only do they come back and they end up having to change careers, lots of times their relationships, their marriages, or their situation changes, because not everyone can and understand the difference that happens in your life. But also, many of these people come back with the ability to channel, the ability to have psychic abilities, or even mediumship abilities that they never had before. But some of them come back and they've been given this gift of being able to see beyond the veil.
It's fascinating. And as far as your beliefs and thoughts of, what happens when we die, I mean, is it similar to, most of what I've read, like you'll have like a life review possibly, and then, kind of I don't know, a meeting with a council or something like that?
I don't know, because I haven't had a near-death experience that I can acknowledge, or, I mean, maybe I have and didn't really put it all together. But I'm certainly aware of many other people's accounts, and so many of them include a life review. where you go back and, it's almost like a movie reel where you see how you interacted with other people, and not only the good things that you did, but maybe where you made other people not feel as good as they should have. And whether it was intentional or not, from what I understand from other people, you can actually, experience how they feel and how you feel. And all of this is done just, in slow motion, but very quickly at the same time. It's very, very hard to explain. But, there's so many people that talk about going through a tunnel or seeing the light, or even if they were in an operating room and they died or they flatlined, their body rose above, and they can, there's so many accounts where they can, the person who came back from that near-death experience can say that the different conversations that were going on, not only in that operating room, but outside of the operating room. And that things have been verified. People have put a lot of effort into trying to get the science to back all this. There's just too many accounts that are very, very similar. So I don't really know. I don't know that I can answer that, like, of, what happens, but in my heart of hearts, and from what I've experienced, I believe that when we die in the physical here, that our life does go on, that we are energy beings, and whatever dimension that would be. I even hear that sometimes that dimension is right here incorporated with the dimension that we're in on Earth. I mean,
Really?
so I've heard that before, that, it's just a different layer of, one thing when you think about, okay, this is just like an analogy, I guess, but you look at a bicycle, and when the bicycle is standing still, it's parked, you see the spokes of the bicycle. All right. But when it is going fast, when you're riding the bicycle, that all gets to be a blur. You don't see it at all. And I believe that's a little bit about what happens. We are at a certain level, so you can see our bodies here. But when we transition to another realm, we are at such a different energy frequency that you don't see the physical body, but that the people can still be here in a different form, not in our bodies,
And from what I understand with these people's experiences too, I'm assuming that perhaps time in that realm doesn't exist, or it's just quite different of an experience than what we experience here right now.
Well, I would say every single spiritual miracle that I have experienced, and I've experienced many, not just the 13 or so I wrote about in this book. For me, time just went completely slow. Everything was in slow motion. So, like, for example, I had an experience with seeing hundreds of dragonflies. I went out to my cul-de-sac when I was leaving my home, basically to say thank you for, giving me a beautiful place to, I don't know who I was thanking, God, give me a beautiful place to raise my children, even though it was all a big lie. And, it caused a lot of heartache and everything. I still was very thankful for so many blessings. And when I really tuned in, dragonflies started to come around one at a time, and then more and more. And they were in such slow motion around me that I could see every little detail on the wings, and I could see the different sizes, and the feeling I got that they were all, many generations of my own family, or just others that,
Wow,
I
that's
didn't
really
know.
cool.
Oh, it was unbelievable. And actually,
That
I,
sounds similar to a psychedelic experience almost.
and, I might have had some, like, chocolate milk. I mean, that was my drink of choice at the time. So, like, so no, there was nothing, no substance or anything that was altering what I was. In fact, I'm someone who really, I'm not into having my person altered with I'm a little high strung because of that. I'm a little bit, almost too present because I
Yeah,
don't.
and I wasn't trying to
No,
make
no, no.
accusations. I'm just it's just really similar to, what a psychedelic experience would be like.
Right,
Time standing still, being able to pull details off of, maybe,
right.
bugs or animals that are in the area.
Yes, I
It-
did. I could see every little thing. And luckily, in like 3/4 of the way through this experience where I had, basically 100 dragonflies circling me, I pulled out my cell phone and I videotaped it. So like I actually I needed proof. I needed to show someone. I mean, look at what has happened. And then since then, I've had amazing dragonfly experiences all over the world, and I live in the Caribbean right now, and I'm amazed at some of the dragonfly experiences I
and
have here.
and what that means to you is generations of your family and stuff like that.
Well, it did at the time. At the time when I was saying goodbye to my home, I just got this overwhelming sense of calm that everything was going to be okay. All right. So, Marni, you lost everything. You lost your house. You lost all your money. You lost everything. You were kind of living a lie. The whole world that you knew kind of came crumbling down. But I had such a great, warm, loving feeling that everything was going to be okay. So, and then I would say now when I see dragonflies, I just get that feeling. I don't know who it is, but I feel like it is someone that's coming by, and I feel like it's just reassuring me that I'm on the right path and everything's good. It's a feeling. It's very hard to explain, but it's just a feeling that comes over
Yeah,
me.
I can buy that. And I've talked to a lot of people that have had similar experiences with different
Yeah, it's the
animals
weirdest
and
thing,
stuff. And it's
but
just like
definitely the
it's like a
slow
knowing.
mo.
It's like a knowing, right? When you
Yes,
do
it's a
see it,
knowing.
it's instant,
Yes,
like knowing, like that's what this means. That's what this is to me.
right,
It's a message, is what it is. It's a message for you.
right. Definitely. And I write a lot about, signs and synchronicities and trying to pay attention to those. And I think I was just so busy in my previous life before my spiritual awakening that even though I did pay attention, I thought the very minute details, and I always had a love of nature, and I was always showing my kids, look at the special little designs on this leaf and on this flower. And I was very much into nature, and so I thought I was paying attention to things, but nothing like I do now. Now I'm really in tune. But
You,
I think that, like what you had mentioned before, things do go in slow motion. And so I
Mhm.
think on the other side, there isn't time. People come back and say that there's no time. You can't describe it. Words can't even describe the colors that they see, let alone the time that they feel.
Yeah, I think time's perhaps just for us to for this kind of experience that we're currently having, and
Right.
to gauge, the beginning and end of things, and to have that experience of loss, because you can't really do that in the spirit world, right? If everything's eternal.
Right. Right.
That's interesting. uh Man, there was a question I was going to ask you, and I lost the thought.
That's okay. I rambled, so I probably contributed to you losing your thought. Sorry.
No, you're good. So what isn't maybe an account or an NDE experience that you've come across in your research that has like kind of been just one that kind of stands out to you?
I would say Eben Alexander. He is the Harvard neurosurgeon who was, he is a brain surgeon, very well respected in his medical profession. So he ended up contracting meningitis and died. And he was just like many medical doctors, not a believer in the spiritual realm or God or anything like that. And his experience was so profound, and he had such evidence to show that. And he wrote the book Proof of Heaven, amongst many other books. And I've had the pleasure of meeting him and his life partner, Karen Newell, who works with binaural beats. She works with sounds and trying to get people, to really get into a deep meditation. But I think his account of his near-death experience, hearing him speak, going to workshops where he talks about this, reading his books, has been a game changer for me, because his experience, and there have been many others too, but provided the evidence I needed to just say, this is not questionable. This is and of course he was ostracized from his medical community. I'm sure his marriage didn't survive it, since he now has a life partner, someone that's more on the same page. Just like with me, I have a life partner who's very spiritual and more on the same page, about being present, and plus just a good person and honest. And, that's such a big change from what I, had lived with. But I would say Eben Alexander, his account was huge for me. And then I since went on to hear Dr. Marni Hill, and there's many other medical doctors that, or hospice nurses that, have experienced things or seen other people experience things that changed their world forever. And they were definitely I only believe in science, tangible proof stuff. And so I would say Eben Alexander was one of the big game changers for me.
Very good. And I going back to that other thought that I had lost prior to, you were talking about synchronicities and how, the more that you're aware, the more that you notice them, the more that people, pay attention to them. But it's funny to me, it's almost as if, at least for me personally, the more that I'm aware of synchronicities and the more I pay attention to them, it's almost as if there is nothing that is chance. There's nothing that is by accident. That everything is a synchronicity, that everything has a reason or a meaning behind it. Do you have you had a similar experience?
I agree completely. Yeah, because I just, I know that we have choice here in the world, and that impacts the results of things, the choices that we make. Hey, I'm going to turn on this road and something else might happen here instead of this road. But yeah, I think that the journey is part of it, and part of it is it's got to come in its own time. And I do believe that if there's not a reason for everything, there's a meaning for everything. And, but your life does change. Like, for example, there was someone that I was close to my whole life since we were little kids. And now I'm starting to see our values have always been very, very different. But I always was accepting and loving, and just never let that get in the way of a friendship, a solid friendship. But then it got to a point where there was dishonesty in there. And I'm so sensitive to dishonesty now, after what I've been through, that when you experience such betrayal from a friend, you have to just say, wait a minute, there's a reason why my eyes opened up, or the light bulb went on when it did. It, for some reason, years ago, it didn't. And the timing is important, because when you are a little more discerning about who you let in your world, then your world opens up to people that are good for you at that time, or that can share some of your same values. And it just makes room for some real honest connections. but yeah, I believe everything happens for a reason. Even the loss of my adult child, that I do not have this child in my life. Um, as painful as it is, I also am choosing to go on in my life, hoping that at some point, she'll see the truth, like the truth will come out, and then that might get her thinking, wait a minute, you know, um, maybe I shouldn't have just, dumped my mom the way that I did when I did. But you know what? I have to look at it like it's got to be in God's time, or maybe it's part of her journey, that there's got to be a reason for everything. There's got to be a meaning for it. Or why would we on earth go through such heartache and pain?
Well, perhaps you
Y-
two also had maybe perhaps a soul agreement prior to coming into
Right.
this world.
Right. In
Um,
fact, I might have had that with my ex-husband,
yeah,
because I really actually, as I mean, his values are so different than mine. And I, I, we just do not resonate with the same kind of values. And the fact that he still is, just doing what he can to just destroy me, he puts a lot of energy into that. I also look at it as, like I told you, a blessing, that if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. And maybe it was a soul agreement from before we even came here, because I've heard of other people that have gone through NDEs. I've heard them say things like that, where they say we have a soul contract where, we come to this world, we choose our parents. That's another thing I've heard, that you choose your parents, you choose the family that you're going to, so that you can experience certain things. I mean, it's hard in a way when you think of all the suffering in the world, and there's so much suffering when you think about the whole world. And why are things so unfair, that we've got the haves and the have nots, and we have the good people that, no matter what their background, or, ethnicity, or social economic status, or whatever, they're just really good people. And then you have people that are more malevolent and evil, and, you know, have don't have remorse or empathy and all that. So when you think of all of that, it is very perplexing. It is very hard to think that we are in a world with such division. And I mean, the last couple of years have also shown us such corruption and such deceit, that,
y-
I keep on hoping that something's going to change here, where the light and the goodness is going to, overshadow such evil
yeah,
deceit. And without getting too political or whatever, it does make you wonder if there's reasons for everything.
yeah. I've often pondered on that myself, thinking that perhaps they're just, the negative, or people that are doing wrong to others. Perhaps they're just souls that need more uplifting, or more time on earth, or more lifetimes on earth. But then I've also thought, well, maybe there has to be evil for us, for humanity, or for everybody to have an experience of the good and the bad, and the yin and the yang.
Right.
I don't know, but I'm just.
No, I think you make a really good point, because really, when you think about it, um, we can appreciate the beauty of our world right now, but if we hadn't gone through some dark times, or bad experiences, or being completely broke, in my case, I just lost everything, you know, um, I appreciate everything now, so I think that you do, maybe that's part of the yin and yang, the balance of it all.
What are your thoughts on past lives? And have you had any like experience or research on like regression, past life regression, and stuff like that?
Well, I actually had a past life regression done, but I really feel I need to have a few more to compare them, because I really, but I do believe that we've had past lives. And again, I go back to evidence. There is this amazing documentary out there about this little kid I don't know if he was like 8 years old or something like that, who was a World War II
Yeah, you're
pilot.
talking about James. I
Oh
can't
my,
remember his last name. James.
yeah. The story is
Ah,
unbelievable.
yeah,
So
it
like
is.
this little kid had no experience of knowing towns or what a house, would he's never been to where this house, but he recognized his house. He talked to these men that he obviously was a pilot with, that are so old, and he remembered their names and different things about them. Okay, so that there are many people that have had like past lives that you know get to a fortunate place in their life where they can talk about it. Luckily his parents just said, wait a minute, this is unusual, this is just like, this is, they didn't expect this. But that was like an evidence, that's one of many where I believe that, okay, maybe you did have a past life. Or here's another one. I don't remember all the details, but like, for example, there was a person who had died from some big cut in their neck. And then when this baby was born, it had this cut in this neck. And the doctors fixed it. And then as that person got older, they talked about really being that other person.
They were
And
able to
so
trace it back to that other person.
they were able to trace it back. And there was some physical remnant to just give like some proof of like, wait a minute, I was that person
Yeah,
before.
I've heard of that, birthmarks being carried over.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Now, in your experience with your past life, um, did you have anything that was kind of unexplainable? Because like I've had a few done, and I've had some stuff like where I don't know. I mean, I guess it could be my subconscious just generating stuff, but there's some stuff that I feel like I had no idea or no business knowing or
Right.
understanding until like I was in that moment. What was your experience like?
I just, like I said, I only had one past life regression done. And I didn't get that feeling that, oh, I was there, or this is all completely honest, and this answers everything. So I would say I don't know that my experience with that is anything to really talk about, maybe in the future though.
What are you currently working on as far as
um,
books and stuff?
well, let's see, excuse me, I got a little cough here. Well, this past year and a half, I was a co-author to 4 best-selling books, like anthology books. So I was involved in that. So I've been writing a lot. I'm currently working on a book of poetry, and actually series with poetry. So I'm finding that very healing and comforting. I actually took a class on fiction writing because originally I wanted to do a prequel and a sequel to God Came to My Garage Sale. But after taking this class, I found that I really am not a fiction writer. I'm I'm better off just writing about experiences. And I'm finding my survivor's voice. I mean, I'm very careful not to slander anyone. Um, you know, when I'm writing, I'm writing about my own experiences, and I'm writing about the truth. So poetry is something that I'm really, really working on right now. And so that's my, I get up and I write every day. So
And what motivates you to do this type of work? I mean, is it just to help
God, it's so
others,
weird. It's
to
like an
spread the love,
inner, it's like
the
an inner
drive, right?
drive. Because listen, I moved to the Caribbean after I retired. I was a high school special ed teacher for 35 years. 12 of those years I was an adjunct professor at Northern Illinois University. Very busy person. And always was tutoring and, just working hard. And then I moved to the Caribbean a couple of years ago, and I am living in paradise where I really could just stop and enjoy my life, and not do a whole lot, but I am driven every day to get up and write. And I love to read and I love to experience things. So, I do take time for self-care. I do take time to enjoy my beautiful surroundings. But I'm just really motivated by writing, and I just find it's very therapeutic. It just lets me put my thoughts and my ideas onto paper, especially with this poetry that I'm doing. I can work on it and then I can just put it aside and pick it up, and other thoughts and experiences happen and I can incorporate that. And it's just a lot of fun for me. It's I do come from a family of writers and educators. So I'm sure, some of that maybe got passed down to me, or it was just part of my experience. And I became a teacher, so I was always had a love of learning. So I think that's what it is. I just really am motivated to to write, you know.
That sounds amazing. The Caribbean and writing books.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very
Living it up.
cool.
That's great. Where can the listeners find you and get a hold of some of the work that you've done?
Well, I'm not on social media anymore, only because it was such a time suck. I mean, I'm glad I did it when I did with Facebook and Instagram and all of that. I met a lot of neat people and reconnected with a lot of neat people, but I just wanted to spend more time writing. So I chose to get off social media. That was the only reason. And so my website, which is the title of my book, is where you can find the other books that I've written, as well as under a happenings. It's called, the menu tab is called happenings. You can see the different book signings. I've got things like this fall. I'm speaking at Columbia University at New York City. Don't quite know what my topic will be, but it's with Blue Talks. So I'm taking the Blue Talk stage, which is very much like TED Talks.
That's impressive.
Well, it's a lot of fun. I got involved in that book. So I'm in volume 2 of Blue Talks, and the essay chapter that I wrote was going from atheist to believer.
That's wonderful.
And so but I think, and I'm sorry, I'm like looking at myself here and it's getting dark, but I'm in the Caribbean, so it's dark here. And apologize.
That's okay.
Okay.
It's been a fascinating discussion. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
It's really great that you're giving an opportunity for people, and it's probably helpful to you too, because you've experienced things yourself.
Oh yeah.
And so it's great to have an opportunity to talk about these things, and because maybe it'll help another person who isn't talking but has experienced things.
That's the
and
goal
needs
of the
to find
show.
their voice. Yeah.
help others and to spread the light.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
All righty, take care.